Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball.
Tuesday, May 19th at 10:30 a.m., it's morning baseball. Wednesday, May 20th at 6:30 p.m., have a pawsome time at Bark in the Park. Thursday, May 21st at 6:30, it's Pride Night with $5 Bud or Bud Light draft beer. Individual game tickets start at just $12.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats. Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby.
The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas.
Well, the big race tonight. There's 6 primaries, I think, in 6 different states.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
And the big, President Trump made a decision. He did not endorse Senator Cornyn.
John Cornyn.
And he endorsed Paxton.
Yeah, that's a biggie because it sounded like he might not endorse anybody. And Cornyn is the sitting senator. He's the incumbent who's running. Paxton, the attorney general. And he knew both of them, said he likes both of them. And just came out a little bit ago. This is huge news because Ken Paxton, we were talking about the polls of late, John, in Texas.
It's a dead heat.
It's a dead heat. But a couple weeks ago, because Cornyn's the incumbent, he was doing better. And Paxton was doing okay, but on the rise. And then in the latest polls, it shows he clearly is having momentum. And that obviously clearly played a role, I think, also with President Trump.
Well, in the studio with us today, we have Judge Richard Weinberg, we have Craig Eaton, the GOP chairman, and a special guest, Governor George Pataki, who's going to be the honoree this year in September 11th for 25 years since 9/11. And you were the hero of that day, that week, that month.
Well, thank you, John, but the hero really were the people who responded with such courage, the police officers, the firefighters, the EMTs, and all the construction workers and just people from every walk of life who really put their lives on the line to try to save their fellow human beings. And so I will be forever proud of how New Yorkers respond 25 years later, even though I'm still extremely saddened by the tremendous loss.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it's 25 years.
I know.
I can't believe it. And I think about the threats to the homeland, too. I mean, just recently, there was the guy who was plotting to go after the synagogues here in New York. I mean, the threat, New York still sadly remains such a pivotal, target.
There's no big event. So that shows you that they are scared that the American people come together and wipe them out.
And as we would.
And that's what happened. That's what happened in 2011, 2001.
2001,
yeah. And all American people, Democrats and Republicans, came together. We went into the wrong target originally. We went to Iraq instead of going to Afghanistan. And but that's
we finally got them. Years later, we finally got them.
You're absolutely right. When we stand together, we can accomplish anything. And one of the few good things that came out of those horrible attacks was the sense of unity the Americans have. And my greatest concern today is we seem so fractured. People lose friendships because they have different political views. And Abraham Lincoln said it best: a house divided against itself cannot stand. We have got to come together, or we're not going to continue to succeed.
Well, we have a problem.
That's a good point.
And that is what's happening right now. In Texas, of all places, President Trump decided on Attorney General Paxton versus John Cornyn.
Yep.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be, this is, as you're talking about the midterms too, Governor, and sort of as we're talking about all these things, we are so divided right now. It saddens me. And it's like two different worlds, too. If you look at sort of what, let's even talk the Texas race, for example. The guy who is running on the Democratic side, this guy, James Tallarico, he came out and said that there are 5 genders. He came out and said, he seems incredibly divisive with his rhetoric. It's like, we use the phrase sane and insane.
And yet he could win. And one of my concerns over the president's endorsement is, I don't know Paxton. I have no reason not to be for him if he's the nominee. But my concern is just, I want to make sure we win. If we lose control of the Senate, President Trump's last 2 years are going to be a nightmare. He won't be able to get anybody confirmed to any position in his cabinet. He won't be able to get any judges confirmed. And they'll be out there trying to impeach him every day of the week. And we will have 2 years where he just is unable to accomplish anything. So my view is whoever has the best chance of winning, they're both going to vote with President Trump more than 90% of the time, whereas Tallarico probably wouldn't vote with him 10% of the time. So that's my view.
Maybe 1%. Craig Eaton.
First, I just want to say I respect and admire your humility, Governor, but on 9/11, we needed leadership, and you produced that leadership. You stepped up on behalf of all New Yorkers in New York State, and you led, and that's what all these people needed. But I just want to go to the Paxton thing for a second. Is, in my personal opinion, I think it makes sense for the president to stay out of these races, because if he goes too close with one candidate, then they're going to tar and feather that candidate when he goes into the general election. He should be hands off, let the candidates fight it out among themselves so they don't have a MAGA hat on them, and they have a better chance of winning in the general.
Your thoughts, Judge Weinberg, you're sitting there shaking your head agreeing.
Well, listen, I think that both the governor and the chairman are absolutely correct. You should have stayed out of it. If he's going to endorse anybody, he should have endorsed the incumbent Senator Cornyn. Cornyn worked with Senator Thune as majority leader, Barrasso as majority whip. They were the guys who said he's the best candidate. He's a much easier candidate to vote for in November than Paxton, because Paxton has his baggage. That's not to say in a choice between whatever his name is, a Democrat, the kid who's a radical lefty, is totally out of his mind. He goes in the insane category in terms of his values.
He makes AOC look like Clint Eastwood.
So the short answer is, but do you really want to jeopardize, to the governor's point, do you really want to jeopardize the control of the United States Senate in these important times? Because not only will you not get the federal judges through and the cabinet appointees, you need to have a unified country to fight all our external enemies, and these people will undercut his ability to do foreign policy and national security. You need to have a Republican Senate and House.
Well, speaking of foreign policy, here's some breaking news.
Breaking news, WABC.
President Trump just saying that we may need to give Iran another big hit. He's saying he's going to wait at least a few days to a week to maybe give peace a chance through his Arab allies like UAE and Qatar and Saudi. But he says, if not, be prepared. We are putting Iran on notice.
I mean, I can understand President Trump, and I see heads shaking. It's the fact is, I could see the fact that the more we destroy, the more we're going to have to fix up. Because we're going to win the war. But at the end of the day, the more we destroy, it's our responsibility to put it back up again.
But we want victory, too.
I'd like to hear from Governor Pataki and Craig. And,
what do you think, Gov? I mean, I think we need victory, too. That's the other thing.
I think the idea that the crazy Iranian, whatever they call themselves, Revolutionary Guard, are going to be in control of nuclear-capable powder, missiles capable of hitting anywhere in Europe would be a catastrophe. So now that we're in the war, I think we have to make sure that they don't have any nuclear capacity and that their hands are tied from attacking anyone else.
I agree.
I just don't see, how long is this going to continue where, well, there's peace because we're making progress and I know I have to bomb them again. Oh, there's peace. Now we have to bomb them again. At some point, the threat becomes idle after you've made it a half dozen times. So it's time to either have a resolution or do something.
Craig Eaton.
And every day that goes by, Governor, they're closer and closer to getting nuclear weapons. So, I mean, we need to stop them now. But he keeps threatening. A couple of weeks ago, Secretary of State Rubio said, we're ready, we're going to attack again if nothing happens. Now, 2 weeks later, the president, we're going to attack again. On the other hand,
he's giving peace a chance. I'll give him credit for that.
But we can't keep posturing like this.
He's giving the regime the ability to consolidate power, execute more dissidents, and make it more difficult to bring them down.
Agreed.
That's what he's doing.
Agreed.
Finish it. We're going to go to General Jack Keane, but go ahead, finish.
Yeah, I think we'd all hope that the Iranian regime would finally say, okay, we understand, we're giving it up. But there comes a point where you can't just negotiate until next year. You have to either hold them accountable and take the necessary action or have an agreement that we can live with. And it's time for one or the other to happen.
I don't know, you weren't here, but I compared the Iranian regime to the Planet of the Apes, the chimpanzees and the gorillas. The gorillas are in charge right now. The chimpanzees, which is supposed to be the smarter of the Iranian people, they're not necessarily in charge. Let's go to General Jack Keane, and maybe he has some good opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's bring in General Jack Keane, and of course, his great background. He is a retired 4-star general. He's also the chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, and he's also a Fox News senior strategic analyst. General Jack Keane, what are your thoughts about where things should go from here?
Well, first of all, we have to be clear-eyed about what has happened here. The Iranians shut down the Straits of Hormuz to accomplish one objective, and that is to stop the war, and they accomplished that. Then their second objective was to begin negotiations and drag out the negotiations over time so that at some point the pressure would rise on the president politically and economically that he'd be willing to walk away. And here we are. We went to 2 weeks on a deadline, and then we extended it a week, and then we extended it indefinitely. So now we're at 6 weeks in a negotiation phase. The war would have been over 2.5 weeks ago if we had continued with the mission that we assigned ourselves, and we'd be dealing with keeping the Straits of Hormuz open right now. That's where we would be, but we're not there. But we're 6 weeks in, and we still don't appear to be any closer to a deal that I see in achieving that. And I totally agree. We should have imposed deadlines on ourselves, if not on them. And I think we should have returned to full combat operations. Let's assume we get a good deal. But here's some of the limitations of a good deal. Number one, they're going to want release of the frozen assets that are in excess of $100 billion. Maybe not all of them, some of them initially, and some of it condition-based. 2, a release of the sanctions that are being imposed on them. Again, not all at once, but condition-based. What does that do? Obviously, the regime survives, but we begin to finance the recovery of the regime. In other words, we're extending the life of this regime for years to come. Was that what the intent was at the beginning? I don't think so. I think the intent was to do as much damage to this regime as possible. We knew we couldn't do physical regime change without troops on the ground, but we felt that we could put them in such a vulnerable condition that they'd be vulnerable to their own people. That was the intent, and that's not where we are right now. The second thing that's going to happen, and it's almost guaranteed to happen. We signed the deal, and no matter what is on that piece of paper in terms of our objectives, nuclear dust is out of there, no enrichment, no support for the proxies, restriction on ballistic missile program. We know for a fact, after 47 years in dealing with these guys, no matter what is on that piece of paper, it means nothing to them. They will begin to reverse everything that's on that piece of paper and cheat. That is what we'll be passing on to the next administration. I think we got to call it for what it really is and go back to full combat operations and finish this thing once and for all and open up the Straits of Hormuz.
So, General Jack Keane, what does that look like? Is that Karg Island? What is that to really decimate them?
Yeah, what people are concerned about, so our audience understands, if we go back to combat operations, the Iranians are threatening, and the administration is listening, that they would retaliate against the Arab oil and gas fields. And as a result of that, the world could spin into some kind of global recession. Well, first of all, that doesn't account for the fact that we can defend those capabilities, and not all of that is going to get through. It doesn't account for the fact that we can take Karg Island, and I'm glad you brought that up, Rita. We can tell the Iranians before hostilities begin, if you attack the Arab oil or gas fields, we will begin to systematically dismantle Karg Island. In other words, systematically destroy it. And every oil and gas export facility that you have on your mainland, we will destroy. And I think that is leverage. Whether it works or not I don't know until we actually execute it. But it is significant leverage that we have. I just know we're not in a good place right now with looking for a deal. I know President Trump is not going to make a bad deal. That I've got confidence in. But as I said, there's also limitations to even a good deal because it extends the life of the regime for sure, and they're going to cheat and try to reverse it.
You know, General Jack Keane, I was watching you earlier on Fox, and you brought up an interesting premise about offering the IRGC, these Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the hardened guys, a free trip out. Explain that.
Well, if we go back to full combat operations, listen, in the 6 weeks that we've been in this negotiation phase, we've been moving more capability into the region. And on our intelligence, Mossad and CIA and military intelligence has all improved because we've had 6 weeks. And therefore, we're going to conduct even more devastating attacks than we did for the first 4 or 5 weeks. We got about 2 weeks left. And as a result of that, we're going to put this regime on the path of not just military destruction, but economic destruction as well. And they're not going to be able to make payroll and sustain themselves. And at that point, at the end of the campaign, is when we talk to them and say, we'll give you a free ride out of here in any place you want to go, and we'll spare you. And we're not going to follow you with sanctions, et cetera. And see if they would take that deal. Maduro didn't take the deal, but maybe they would take the deal because they're going to be in a much more desperate situation. Maduro was not in as desperate a situation as what these guys have been in, who will be hiding in bunkers for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and obviously being concerned about their own individual lives. I think we got all the cards to play here, and I hope we play them.
And General Jack Keane, we have also Governor George Pataki here.
General, thank you for being on and for your really intelligent analysis. Do you actually think that if we begin again the kinetic war effort, that it could be over in as short as 2 or 3 weeks?
That's what yes. I mean, in talking to the Israelis and talking to CENTCOM, that is what they estimate, and that's what they've told the president. They've got about 2 weeks of targeting to take place. Then they would open the Straits of Hormuz. That would last longer. Obviously, we have to secure it. We already have the lanes secure and make certain that the traffic is flowing. And obviously, the Iranians will attempt to retaliate that. But we would do the full combat operations first and make certain that while we're doing that, obviously, we're destroying a lot of their ability to retaliate against those straits. If we don't open the Straits of Hormuz, even through a peace deal, if the straits are open and because we cancel our blockade, the other problem you have with that, Governor, is the Iranians are going to hold that over the heads of people in the region, for years to come. Every time there's a crisis, they're going to threaten taking down the Straits of Hormuz. So I think it's the right thing to do is to show them that we can open this and secure it.
There's no choice. No choice. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
I have a question also, Jack, on the UAE. Like UAE and Saudi and Qatar are the ones who said, okay, give a few more days now. Try to give peace a chance. He was all ready to go. In fact, he even confirmed it today, the president, that he was within an hour of making the call and then held back because they said, wait, we may have a deal. What is the objective of UAE and Saudi and Qatar? Especially UAE is getting pounded by Iran. And in fact, there were more strikes today from Iran to UAE. So what's their objective as to why they're now putting it on pause?
I'm stunned by it, to be frank. Completely surprised. And also the UAE. Listen, the UAE has been fighting back. They don't talk about it, but they've been conducting strikes on Iran when the war began. They have 19 Patriot batteries to help defend them, and they have Iron Dome with Israelis manning the Iron Dome in their country. And I don't understand what their concern is. I don't get it. And they have been steady from the beginning. Saudi Arabia surprises me, but not as much as the UAE does. Qatar has no capability whatsoever, and the Iranians are already, in their country. They share the gas distribution and production capability that's in Qatar as it is. That country, I realize, they want peace. They don't want any war. I get it, but the UAE has been really tough. Now, why are they focusing on the UAE? One, because the UAE has normalized with Israel. And it is absolutely historic that we have Israeli troops in an Arab nation defending them with an air defense system. Can you imagine that?
That's amazing, yeah.
That's what normalization gets you. Yep. The second thing is the UAE represents modernity for the Arab states. There's no Arab state that it is modern in its culture and in every which way. They've advanced that small country into something to be very proud of. And the Iranians see it as a symbol of Arab dominance that they're beginning to achieve. And that's why I think they've attacked them more than they've attacked Israel, in excess of 2,800 times, to be frank about it.
Yeah, and Governor Pataki, you have one question here for the General.
General, just switching gears, I've been following every day the Institute for the Study of War's frontline maps and analysis of the Ukrainian war. And there seems to be a growing consensus that the tide has turned and the Ukrainians not only are not losing, but are at least holding their own and perhaps have the Russians on their back foot. Could you briefly comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. On the front lines, the war's been stalemated for 18 months or so, and the Russians haven't been able to make all that much progress. They made some. But now in 26, the Russians are losing more troops than they can replace. That has never happened in all the years of the war. And that has enabled Ukrainians to move on the offense and begin to take ground on the front lines. Not overwhelmingly, but slowly but surely taking more ground. Haven't seen that in 3+ years. Secondly, they are attacking deep into Russia with their own missiles and with long-range drones. They're attacking Moscow. They're attacking manufacturing plants. They're bringing this war to Russia in a way that they have not done before. And that also is beginning to take notice, particularly among the people in Russia. So, yes, that's a good word. The tide has turned. The momentum has shifted to the Ukrainians for the first time since the beginning of the war, when the Ukrainians stopped the Russian offensive from overrunning Kyiv.
And Governor Pataki, your son is in Ukraine right now?
Yes, he is.
Tell me what he's doing.
Well, the Pataki Center is working with the State Department to do youth sports activities in Ukraine. And he's over there with a couple of other of our volunteers for the Pataki Center. And today, actually.
And he's safe and everything's fine?
Well, yeah, he's safe. There's no place in Ukraine that is immune from the possibility of an attack, but they're not near the front lines. And this morning, they had 12 youth flag football teams show up for a tournament in central Ukraine. And what we're trying to do is raise the morale of the next generation. That, yes, you've lived through a horrible war. It's not over yet, but there is going to be a future. You can have fun.
General, last question. Putin was in to see President Xi today. Any gut feeling?
Say that again.
Putin.
The speech?
Putin was supposed to go see Xi today in China.
Oh.
Did he go,
yeah.
or do you have any knowledge of that?
I'm assuming he did. I mean, they want to solidify this relationship. Listen, they have their challenges. Putin has got his challenges with Ukraine. Obviously, he made a strategic mistake in invading Ukraine. He's taken on more than he really has the wherewithal to deal with. That's pretty obvious when you look at what's happening to him. He and President Xi both lost their foothold in the Western Hemisphere with Venezuela, which was kind of their prize in the relationship they had. They're also, I think, getting close to Cuba being in economic collapse. And so, yeah, he wants to shore up this relationship is what this is really all about. And make no mistake about it. I mean, they are partners. China and Russia both, they certainly want a negotiated deal here. And why is that? They don't want the United States to continue to physically and materially and economically destroy Iran, because that's their foothold in the Middle East. They want to see a negotiated deal where Iran gets to survive and extends itself. Therefore, their foothold in the Middle East and their influence remains solid. That's what they want, and that's why
General,
they're helping them.
I was with Maria Bartiromo this morning on her show, and I said that Putin and Xi, their mission is for President Trump to either lose the Senate or lose the Congress this year, and that way, if they bring in the Democrats, then I guess we have a problem. Well, thank you.
No doubt about it. Hey, Governor, I just want to I know you were going to end here. I really appreciate the leadership you provided to my state. I'm a born and raised New Yorker. I don't live there, but I visit it all the time. I grew up in city housing projects in New York City.
Well, General,
really applaud your service.
The governor is the honoree this year, and on 9/11, if you happen to be near, please come. It's on September 11th, and it's the WABC and the Pataki Center doing a joint ceremony for 25 years and 250 years.
That's wonderful.
General, thank you for your kind words, and most importantly, thank you for all you have done for this great country.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, General. Thank you. Have a good day, General. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rita, do we have a break, or what do we have?
Yeah, actually, we got a break right now, and then we have Professor Alan Dershowitz right after that.
You talk, we listen. 77 WABC. Common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Cats and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Cats and Cosby, and joining us now is Professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor Dershowitz, before we go, we got a whole bunch of legal stuff, but your thoughts on everything, where it's going with Iran and what needs to happen now?
Well, we don't know what the terms of Iran's offer are, but if it simply allows them to slow down their production of nuclear-grade material and gives them the resources to secretly arm their surrogates and continue business as usual, it would be a terrible defeat. Trump was close today to attacking, and unless there is a good reason for not attacking, I think that the attack should have been allowed to go forward. Now, if a good deal emerges, and that would mean all of their nuclear material taken out of the country and not given to Russia, but given to the United States or to some reliable international group with at least a 20-year guarantee of no renewal, then we're back to business as usual. My preference would have been to see enough of a destruction of Iran to encourage regime change from within. There'll never, ever be peace in the Middle East with this regime in power, no matter what deal it signs and no matter what concessions it makes. If this regime is allowed to remain in power, there will never be peace in the Middle East. And every Arab country in the Middle East knows that, but the Gulf states are more interested in their oil profits, and so they urged President Trump to delay his military attack, and President Trump understandably did that. I hope he's right, and I hope the end result will be good for the world.
I guess $100 a barrel. The Gulf states produce about 60, 70 million barrels a day. It's an extra 600 billion a day or something. I don't know.
Give or take a billion.
I got to do the actual calculation.
But a lot's on the line.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line, but there's more on the line than money and economy. There's the survival of the world.
Yep.
And in Iran, with access to nuclear capabilities, is a tremendous threat to the world, to America allies, and ultimately to the United States. And so I hope this isn't a short-sighted view of how to achieve some degree of peace before the midterm elections and leaving the problem by kicking it down the road. That's not going to be an ultimate solution. This was a real opportunity to do in 2026 what France and Britain did not do in 1935, when they failed to prevent Nazi Germany from strengthening and becoming a source of force that could kill 70 million people, that could easily have been prevented in 1935 if the British and the French had engaged in a preventive war based on the failure of Germany to comply with the Versailles Treaty. But they didn't do it. They failed, and we all know the result. And we don't know what the result will be of failing to destroy the regime in Iran today. We can only hope and pray that our country is doing the right thing.
Right. And listen, President Trump today, I was watching him today, Professor Dershowitz. I mean, he's still steadfast on they cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's what's at stake. I mean, so that's the good thing.
We're hearing reports also that Vice President Vance is pushing hard against any kind of renewal of military action. So it's complex, and we don't know all the facts and the whole truth. So we have to wait and see.
Good point. Judge Weinberg.
Professor Dershowitz, I want to switch gears, and I want to focus on this pathology that's going on, coming out of this Mangione assassination of the insurance executive, and all these fans he has. He has all these people who are supporting him somehow in the most Marxian way that social murder is acceptable.
And by the way, some of them got press passes.
Right.
I mean, that's the shocking.
So how do we, Alan? So how do we deal with that pathology?
Yeah, no, it's a pathology, but I'm sitting on the east side of New York, and just 10 blocks north of where I am, in 1939, 1938, Nazis wearing brown shirts and swastikas, good old Americans, marched down the street to Madison Square Garden, where 30,000 of them cheered on Hitler. So pathology can bloom anywhere. And there are really pathological people in the United States that support murderers. There are some that support Iran, some that support Hamas, and then some that support Mangione. And we're going to see others that we know there are some that support others who have killed Americans and those who have taken shots at our president. And, we have to stand up against them, and we have to expose them for what they are: sick, disturbed, anti-American people. And, many of them combine that with Jew hatred, America hatred, Catholic hatred, you name it, hatred of any group, or anti-Muslim hatred of the kind that we may have seen in San Diego. So all that hatred has to be stopped, and we have to draw the line at violence. And the idea that Mangione can get hero treatment by some crazy people is very disturbing. Fortunately, the numbers are not all that large, but any number is too large.
Yeah, good point. Craig Eaton.
As we're sitting here, Professor, we're watching, the Fox News is on. It says Luigi Mangione fans celebrate CEO's death at hearing.
Yeah,
I mean, this is ridiculous that people are actually celebrating that he killed a man in cold blood on a city street. I mean, what are these kids thinking of?
One of these women yelled out, his children are better off without him. No, they're not.
And it's young people too.
Future.
That's the one thing that Craig just hit on, a very good point, that you see it. It's like these young, mostly college age kids. What is going on?
Let's never forget who put Hitler in power. It was the students at the University of Munich, the University of Berlin, the University of Heidelberg. Who put Stalin in power? Young people. Who put Castro in power? Young people. Never trust anybody under 30. We used to say when we were kids, don't trust anybody over 30. I'm beginning to get very suspicious. Now, you can't generalize. There are a lot of great young people out there, but much of the radicalism in today's world is generated by young people who are ignorant of history and are looking for quick fix solutions and symbols. And people like Mangione provide that kind of symbolism. So it's no accident that there are so many young people involved in this craziness.
Well, the income on, other than the United States, on oil being at $100 a barrel is $8 billion a day. I counted on my fingers. So if they delay 3 more days, that's $24 billion.
It's getting to be big money at this point. Yeah,
billion here, billion there.
Serious money, a billion here and there. Yeah.
Well,
Look,
Professor,
the most important thing is you keep telling the truth. You keep making sure that Americans listen to all sides of every story. So, keep up the great work, and I'm happy to join you anytime.
We love having you.
Thank you so much. And
thank you.
And we'll see what happens in tonight's primary elections, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.
Great. Thanks a lot.
And Rita, you have the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya Foods, and they make the best beans.
They are the best.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
Well, here are some of the headlines, guys. As we've been talking about, President Trump says that he was 1 hour away from making the decision to attack Iran. He made the comment to reporters this morning saying that he got a call from Middle Eastern leaders saying they think a deal is close. Trump said the leaders asked for a couple days to continue talks. President Trump repeating today anywhere from 2 to 3 days to a week at the most. We'll see what happens, guys. Also, voters are heading to the polls in Alabama, Idaho, Kentucky, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and also Georgia today. In Georgia, 5 GOP candidates will battle to face Georgia Democrat Senator John Ossoff, who Republicans think is vulnerable in the November midterms. In Kentucky's GOP primaries, you've got Republican Congressman Thomas Massey, who's been a vocal Trump critic. He faces another Trump-backed candidate. So that will be interesting to see who pulls out that one tonight. Of course, Trump is endorsing his rival. We'll keep you posted. We'll have all the details. And everybody coming up, who better than to give us his take on the primaries than the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. He's going to join us right after the break, John.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC. Breaking news, WABC.
With us today is Kevin McCarthy, the former, I hate to say former, the Speaker of the House, and we never say former.
Never do. Once the Speaker, always the Speaker.
And, Mr. Speaker, tonight we have... serious.
Yes, six big primaries in the House, a lot.
And can you give us an update for? I guess they'll all start to come in about 8, 9 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, you're going to get 6 different states across the union. You're up in primaries. It's the primary season. There's a few big ones that are going to take place here too. I think one that has been the most expensive, Massey, Congressman Massey, and the president had endorsed against them. And when you look at just the primary earlier in the week with Cassidy in the Senate, the president is stronger than he's ever been. I mean, he's stronger politically than Ronald Reagan was in the Republican Party. So I think a lot of people will be watching this one because it's not easy to beat an incumbent. And when you had Rand Paul backing Massey as well, but in the first term, the president had gone against him and Massey still won. I think it might be different this time. We'll have to see.
You know what's interesting, Mr. Speaker, is specifically about the Massey race. I found this fascinating. The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, came in there. I mean, you could tell that there's a real focus for the president, and that's because Massey also voted against the big, beautiful bill, which was really the president's agenda. So this is a biggie, right? I mean, this will be a real test. And the Cassidy defeat, I mean, he came in 3 in the primaries out of a choice of 3 candidates.
That is so true. I mean, there's a runoff in there, and Cassie's incumbent, and he's not even going forward about it. The president is very strong. And, I mean, the other thing that's happened that people are looking at, especially with these primaries, is what the Supreme Court did the other day. 2 different things. The Virginia Supreme Court knocking down what the Democrats tried to redraw those lines, and then clarifying that we don't have these minority and majority districts, so other states are redrawing. The Republicans in the House are going to gain a number of seats. So instead of the Democrats looking at this November and only have to win 3 to win the majority, they now are going to have to win 9 to 10. That changes what people had thought before with the House split. There is an opportunity here for the Republicans to keep the House. This is if they really focus on moving legislation now, and that's why being together and not having people splinter off could keep you much stronger going forward. And I think after the primary tonight, if the president's successful, that may make the team stay closer together and focus. And there's a real enthusiasm in the conference right now after those decisions that they have a chance to keep the majority.
And so what other states do you think are critical?
Tonight or just going forward, look, I think there's real opportunity to gain seats in Florida and Texas. We're watching that and just the growth through there. There's Alabama, Mississippi that could each pick up one. South Carolina could pick up another one. All those add up. Remember, they only have a majority by a couple seats, so every seat matters. There's just not as many competitive seats. Tonight, I think the real state that everybody's going to be watching is Kentucky. You've got the congressional seat with Massey. You also have the Senate seat there, Andy Barr, who's been a congressman I served with him a long time, and he always had tough seats and tough races, but he always pulled through, and that's what we're seeing now, because there was a lot of money spent with somebody else, and Andy stayed strong, and I think he's going to become victorious tonight.
What do you make, Mr. Speaker, about all of the rhetoric on the Democratic side? You brought up the redistricting in South Carolina, because it's like, if it's not what they like, then they start talking, as we heard Kamala Harris saying, okay, well, maybe we'll pack the courts. Maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll do that. On South Carolina, we're hearing from people like Jim Clyburn who are suddenly saying, oh, well, if you redistrict me out, it's racism. They're using the Jim Crow 2.0 as like the new phrase in the last 48 hours.
Yes, I see that they always argue if they're not the victors, and you watch what the Supreme Court did. It just made a decision simply on not picking the color of your skin, just making it competitive races. And what I see that is the Democrats want to try to control what they have. If not, they want to change the rules. I just think playing fair is the better way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And they don't want to, though. It seems like it's the rhetoric. It's interesting. We had somebody on who was saying, in terms of sort of the midterms this year, it's really a question of sane and insane. How do you view it? And what do you say to the American public?
Exactly. You've got such crazy. And look what the Democrats are doing, and look what they're trying to do for president. You've got AOC out there seriously telling us she's going to run for president, and she's the one building the crowds.
That's really hard to believe, but it is what it is. And I think the big decision has to be made. If we have to win 49 states like Reagan won in 1984 to get rid of the bizarro or the socialist Democrats. What other way can we do it?
That's the only way that I see that we're going to be able to do it. Look, we got to keep working hard. We got to get this economy stronger. We got to make the streets safer, exactly what the president has been doing in his executive orders, and I think we'll be good to go.
Yeah, well, the president seems full steam ahead. How important do you think also Iran is for the midterms? How, where it goes?
Look, I think Iran is very important, but I want the president not to make a decision on Iran based upon politics. I want him based upon making the world safer, and that's exactly what he's been doing. So a lot of people are trying to play politics into that. I like the idea that he's holding strong and getting a good deal to keep the world safe.
Yeah, 100%, Kevin. I agree. That is the key, and bravo for his courage for doing that. Well, Kevin McCarthy, the former speaker, always the speaker, right, John?
And absolutely. And tonight, you'll know by 10 o'clock when you're on again tonight, 10 o'clock, Rita.
Well, now I got great insight from the former speaker. How better can you do that? Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're coming back. And Rita, that was a great interview. Let's come back. I think we got Jake Novak on. Jake, are you there?
Yep, Jake.
Jake Novak.
We're trying to get Jake, but Governor, as we're talking, Governor Pataki.
Governor Pataki.
Yeah. What did you make of that? It's interesting, the midterms, and you look at some of the candidates that are out there. We were talking about Tallarico earlier, the Democrat in the Texas race. That guy's crazy.
It's one thing if the Democrats win. That would be a disaster for President Trump and I think the country. But if they win with the type of candidates they are running, it is a catastrophe for the country. The guy in Maine said he was an avowed communist and maybe a Nazi. The guy in Michigan is seems to be a Muslim radical. And these are the Democratic nominees that, if we lose in November, are going to be holding up the banners in the Senate. And God only knows what that means for us.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you're right. They are so extreme. And joining us now, we have Jake Novak. He is joining us now. Jake, your thoughts about just the extreme candidates. And I know you got a lot on Graham Plattner in Maine.
Yeah, a lot of people are making a big deal out of the salacious new revelations this morning that he wrote some stuff that on a radio.
Wait, you're breaking up, Jay. Call us back. You're breaking up. You're breaking up. By the way, one of the things with Graham Plattner in particular is how about this Nazi tattoo? And the thing is, Governor Pataki, it's not just any Nazi tattoo. It's of an SS guard.
It's the SS.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is extreme to your point. Did you ever think if somebody said to you a couple of years ago, are you going to have the candidate who's going to be the Democratic nominee for a U.S. Senate seat would have a tattoo and say, and he also said that women, by the way, who get raped, that they need to buck up and act like adults. This is disgraceful.
What a wonderful choice the Democrats have made.
Why is he not automatically disqualified?
They had a liberal governor who was running against him, and she was about to get crushed. And it just shows you where the activists in the Democratic Party are today.
And you happen to have a great United States Senator, Susan Collins,
right,
who's the incumbent senator who deserves re-election. She's a common sense, centrist person.
Yeah, and keeps getting reelected time and time again. The thing is, though, there's a big machine. It's the same guy who helped propel Mondani, who's helping to propel Graham Plattner, Governor Pataki.
They have a very effective left-wing network. These are not liberals. The Democratic Party used to be a liberal party. Now, with some conservatives, now it's a left-wing party with some liberals. And that is a very frightening prospect for the future of this country.
Yeah, it is. And I understand we got Jake back again. Jake, back by popular demand. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so today's revelations, I mean, if you look at the mainstream media, even the right-wing media is focusing on the wrong thing, guys. They're focusing on these salacious, literal bathroom posts by Graham Plattner, this guy in Maine. But honestly, the most important revelation this morning was that in 2019, he voluntarily went online to mock a U.S. soldier who had been shot by the Taliban on video. I think it's fair for any journalist who interviews him from now on. In fact, it would be malpractice if they don't ask him. They should ask him. You can't just say, oh, I'm sorry for saying this and I've changed my mind. You should be asked, have you sought mental health care? This is not the actions of someone who is stable. And I'm not saying that as a joke, and I'm not meaning to denigrate mental illness. If you take a look at this guy's public record, he is not well. He's not a well man. If he did get some kind of treatment between now and when he posted these things, I want to know about it. That's how bad it is, guys. That's how bad it is.
Now, some of the other races going tonight is a big primary night. We have 6 different states for primaries, and Texas, the big one on Paxton and Cornyn. Any opinions on those?
Yeah, the Paxton thing. Now, remember, when he declared, he was way ahead in the polls, and the Cornyn machine, the RNC machine, really started to circle their wagons around Cornyn. There are a lot of people who are upset about that, who say that they don't want to donate to the RNC as long as they're going to do stuff like this with Cornyn. Can't they take a step back on some of these? So it'll be interesting. I think Paxton has the inside tracker, not only because President Trump endorsed him, but because he was in such a big lead to begin with. But honestly, the party itself might want to take a look at certain primary races where they don't choose favorites so readily. And I think they did that here. And they may have some problems going forward in Texas because of it after the results tonight.
Any particular news on any of the congressional races?
Nothing specifically right now. I think another big interesting story right now, though, is that out of Los Angeles, that mayor's race, and I know you've talked about it on the show here, the socialists in the city council in Los Angeles have abandoned their fellow socialists. And they decided to circle around Karen Bass because of Spencer Pratt's surge. I think they realized this other candidate, that their fellow socialist, has no chance. And that's very interesting because that shows that Pratt really is a threat right now. And that's, of course, the second biggest city in the country and getting a lot of attention for a lot of reasons.
And then you got, of course, the governor's race there, too. You've got, and it's between Steve Hilton, Chad Bianco, the former sheriff, and then you got Tom Steyer, who, as we're talking about extreme candidates, that guy said the people that are deported should come back from the country. He wants to bring them back. He's talked about even reparations. I mean, that guy is really extreme.
And even scarier is Gavin Newsom on record, and I put this on my show over the weekend here at WABC. Gavin Newsom went on record and basically asked him, well, what if 2 Republicans win this jungle primary? And he basically intimated that they would nullify the election, that they would find some way to get a Democrat there. It's all on tape. You can hear it. He's just completely cavalierly saying this. And that's even more concerning than a Tom Steyer, although he's pretty concerning. You're right.
Yeah, definitely. I getting back to the Graham Plattner, what you talked about at the top, he's a former military guy. I want you to explain a little bit of his background, because for him to be out there mocking a soldier, with the Taliban, a U.S. soldier, it's appalling for anybody. But this is a guy who wore the uniform.
Yeah, he did. And, there's something in that rant against this soldier who was shot. He talks about how he was out of shape and he made some mistakes that led to his getting shot that might be appropriate in a drill sergeant situation. Maybe he should have been a drill sergeant, where they really lace into the recruits to try to teach them a lesson and keep them alive. But it had no place in a public forum, one that he sought out himself. This wasn't, for example, a response to an interview question or something like that. And, of course, if this is the same thing as this guy, another issue with him, of course, everyone talks about the Nazi tattoo, but that's really not the full story. It's not just a Nazi tattoo. It's not a swastika. It is the SS division that ran and operated Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. Like, who gets a tattoo like that? And he lied about not knowing what that tattoo meant. So, and I think it really is. I mean, I'd like to ask him if I had a chance to interview him, I'd say, these rantings and things that you did as a young person, which you've apologized for, did you seek professional help for these positions? Because this is not normal. And if he deflects on that, then, that'll say more than him actually saying something.
Yeah, and here he is running for U.S. Senate. Boy, oh boy. Jake, thank you very much. Boy, troubling times,
and,
no
Rita,
doubt.
You're going to 10 o'clock here. When you're on tonight, you and Joe Concha is on at 9. And Rita, you're on at 10. By that time, you're going to know all the primaries.
Yeah, and in fact, it's weird. In Kentucky, you guys, some of the polls close at 6 Eastern time, and then the rest close at 7. So it depends how quick it comes. But you're right, by 10, we should have all the results. So you definitely want to tune in, John. I knew you always do.
And we got Joe Concha. Let's take the break, and Joe Concha is going to come right back.
Common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. And joining us now is Joe Concha. Joe, before we get into all the late night polls and all that other stuff, let's talk about the primaries, because tonight, lots at stake.
Well, absolutely. We have Thomas Massey in Kentucky, Kentucky 4. He's been in Congress since 2012 and has opposed President Trump at every turn. The guy who voted against I couldn't believe this when I heard about this, when he voted against Israel's Iron Dome, right? And 420 Republicans and Democrats voted for this, and only 9 voted against it. If you don't have the Iron Dome, when Hezbollah and Hamas, the Houthis, the Iranians are firing at you constantly, Israel does not exist as a country, and he voted against that. And that was like my breaking point with this guy. He also voted against the big, beautiful bill, which would have raised taxes if that didn't pass this year for people by as much as 30%. So in the end, this is not, look, I'm not saying you have to agree with President Trump on everything, but this guy never offers a solution to all his no votes. And that's why when you oppose President Trump and Trump supports the person primarying against you, ask Bill Cassidy down in Louisiana, ask those 5 state senators in Indiana who didn't want to redistrict the way Trump wanted to, you will lose. This is the MAGA party right now, not the Republican Party. This is Donald Trump's party, Rita.
And he's been on a roll of late. I mean, you look at Indiana, you brought up also, what happened there with Louisiana. I mean, he definitely has had a big impact. Now, we were talking earlier, Joe, about the UN finally sort of conceding that the worst case scenario for climate change isn't exactly accurate after how many billions of dollars, John, have they spent on this? My goodness.
I mean, look, we heard Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, 2019, said that the world has 12 years left to exist unless we spend trillions of dollars on the Green New Deal. And in 2026, things seem pretty good, right? I mean, in other words, we're not going away in 5 years at this point. this was all a ruse. This was all a gambit, all a grift as far as making the government pay for things that, again, you could spend trillions on climate change, but what's that going to do exactly? In the end, is the Earth warming a little bit? Yeah, probably. But, back in the 80s, we heard about an ice age as well, where the Earth was going to be so cold that we couldn't have it either. So in the end, just let Mother Nature do its job, and we're not going to have to worry about this stuff. But Democrats use this all as a grift, guys. Go ahead.
For many years, the Democrats and some of the people said, the CO2 is rising. But this planet Earth is a self-governing planet. Our Creator created it self-governing. And the real reason, and nobody talks about it, that the CO2 is going up? Because if you go from 7 billion people to 8 billion people, you need more plant life. So the planet Earth creates more CO2 to create more plant life.
That's a perfect analysis, Kat.
It's the truth.
That's totally true. Yeah, exactly. It's not about cars. It's not about pollution, all those things.
It's self-regulating.
It's all about the fact that it's a population thing. Yeah, exactly. When you have 1 million more people, or billion in this case, that's what's going to happen, guys.
Yeah. So, look, all we can do is right now, our SMRs and small modular reactors, nuclear reactors are going to substitute for oil over the next, I would say, 10 to 20 years. But it's not going to happen tomorrow morning. And oil is never going to go away. And oil is infinite. The planet Earth makes oil.
And as is coal as well, right?
Yes.
So that's just the way it works. And we have to live in a reality-based system. But Democrats, again, this is all about playing on people's fears, right? Saying that, all right, the world's going to end. And you can't... AOC literally says that she doesn't want to bring kids into the world because she fears that in 10 years or 5 years in this case, that they will not be able to live here because it's that bad, because it will be that hot. And as we see, today is an exception, that's not the case. It's just not the case. It's where we are at this point.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, Joe, you're going to be on at 9 o'clock, and Rita's going to be on at 10 o'clock. By 9 or 10 o'clock, we're going to know the results of what's going on in those six states in the primaries.
Yeah, and we have Governor Pataki with us. Final thoughts from you, Governor Pataki.
Hey, Gov.
Hey, Joe, thanks for all you do. Just, I just agree with you completely on Massey. It's one thing to disagree with the president on one or two things, but to oppose everything he tries to do and the House Republicans try to do, like the one big beautiful bill, that's just a bridge too far, and I hope the president wins this one.
Oh, yeah. No, you're so right about that, Governor. And that's the thing, right? He ousted Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker, and then didn't have any solution in terms of who should replace him.
Yeah, by the way, you're right. He played a big role in that. You're right, Joe. That's right. He was one of the folks. Yep, big role in blocking McCarthy.
Out too, Rita.
Yep.
Right. So, but who do you want to replace him with? How about you? Oh no, I don't know. There's no B to the A, right? In other words,
no, it's just block.
I don't have that next part of the equation. Yeah, exactly. So, thank you, Governor. Thank you, Rita.
Joe Concha, I'll be listening to you at 9 o'clock. And what do we all stand for?
Truth, justice, and the American way.
Thanks for listening to Katz and Cosby with John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. You can hear Katz and Cosby weekdays at 5. It's the 5 o'clock show on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?